Almost exactly 4 years ago, on October 26th, 2020, I got a call late on a Monday afternoon from my colleague, Reverend Dr. Mark Kelly Tyler. Some of you know Mark. He is the pastor of Mother Bethel, Mother Bethel African American Methodist. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? Mother Bethel AME, African Methodist Episcopal Church, who is a congregation that we work very closely with, and many of you actually joined them last week to do some Get Out the Vote work. We've worked together closely, Mark and I have worked together closely for many years as part of the Power Interfaith Justice Coalition. And Mark called me, and I was in my car. And he said, the police just killed a mentally ill young black man in West Philly. It's on video, he said. It's bad. We have to show up. And at the time, I was the co-chair of Power Interfaith's Clergy Caucus, so it was my job to help organizing people to show up. And Mark and I and many others had been on the streets together night after night during the racial justice uprising that had happened the previous summer. It was an uprising that was sparked by so many stories in this country, just like what happened to Walter Wallace Jr. that night, that afternoon. And so I put on my clergy collar so that I would be recognizable as a minister, and I drove to 61st and Locust Street in West Philly so that I, and along with many other colleagues that I called and Mark called, could simply be present to the neighborhood in the midst of their grief and their fear and their fury. I remember talking with a lot of people who lived in that neighborhood that night. One person told me that there had been a lot of shootings within like a 2-block radius of that spot recently, that another man had been killed just 1 block over, maybe the previous week, though that person had not been killed by the police. They knew Walter Wallace Jr., a man who wrestled with mental illness for many years, but was also a kind man, a man who was good to his kids, a man loved by his mother who had pleaded with the police not to shoot her son. There was one moment where we joined in prayer, holding hands, laying hands on Walter Wallace Jr.'s family alongside the elected officials who had also shown up just to be present like us, the clergy. But most of the night, we just stood on the sidewalk, talked to whoever else was out, did whatever we could to offer ministry during a horrific tragedy. And at one point, later in the evening, a woman, and I'll call her Linda, asked me what church I served. First Unitarian Church, I said. It's near 21st and Chestnut, downtown. And Linda's face lit up. Oh, I know that church, she said. That's where my NA group gets together for parties. I'd showed up to this neighborhood, which was near my own neighborhood at home, but 40 blocks from my church building, to offer holy witness to the raging and grieving people who lived there, only to find that my church building had already provided holy witness to Linda's community of recovery from addiction for many years. And everywhere I go in this city, it seems that I find people like Linda. Several years ago, I joined other Power clergy in marching alongside the SEIU 32BJ union as they were working for a better contract and for a higher minimum wage. This union is the union for building service members, janitors, security staff, people who help make buildings, tend to buildings. And as we marched through Center City, some of the union members that I was walking alongside asked me which church I served. First Unitarian Church. It's near 21st and Chestnut, I said. And their faces lit up. Oh, I know that church, they said. That's where our union gathers for our big organizing meetings. I had showed up to join this union, people who work the night shift cleaning up in office buildings and apartment buildings near Rittenhouse Square, to offer holy witness to their work and to the dignity of them as people only to find that this church building had provided holy witness to their union as they've been working for justice for many years. When I meet new friends who grew up in Philly, particularly in the punk scene in Philly, and they ask me what I do, I say I'm one of the ministers of First Unitarian Church. It's near 21st and Chestnut. Oh, I know that church, they say. And then they tell me fond stories about how many shows they've been to in Griffin Hall, which is the hall underneath the sanctuary here, our basement room that has served as one of the major venues for all ages punk and hardcore and indie rock concerts in Philly for decades. Our church was a safe haven for them when they didn't fit in anywhere else, they tell me. When they needed a place to scream alongside music and sweat and mosh and find a caring anarchist community that would show up for them when no one else would. There's a joke amongst clergy that it's often a real bummer when we have to tell people what we do. Like, you're at a party, and people are like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm a minister. And people will straighten up, and they'll stop talking, and you can tell, you can see the wheels cranking in their brain as they're like looking back over what they've said. They're like, did I take the Lord's name in vain? Did I say anything sacrilegious? Did I make a dirty joke? And I've had my fair share of these conversations, and usually being able to be like, I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. Either they're like, oh, okay, or they're like, I don't know what that is. I will say, though, that since I began serving here, I find that telling people not just that I'm a minister, but I'm a minister here at First Unitarian Church, downtown near 21st and Chestnut Street, more often than not, their face lights up, and they tell me a story about how some part of one of these buildings that we hold has been a home for their life. My kids went to nursery school, they tell me, and their eyes soften as they remember their children who are maybe grumpy teenagers now, as teenagers are supposed to be. Maybe they're fully grown adults themselves. We're just round-faced, chubby little toddlers like my toddlers then, marching slowly up or down the stairs to be received with loving care by one of our daycares here. My singing group has had concerts there, they say, having found an LGBTQ or a feminist singing group where they can use their voice fully in a way that they were taught not to as a child. I've been to drag shows there, they tell me. My political organizing group meets there. My synagogue holds their High Holy Day services there. They may have never come here at 11 a.m. on a Sunday morning. They may have never logged into our Zoom rooms for a virtual service. They may have literally no idea what Unitarian Universalism is. But this building, the 12,315 square feet of our space that we share with the community, has been a home to them in some way or another. A home for the Jewish high holidays, a home for justice, a home for music, a home for a euphoric, sweaty, screaming community of outcast teens and 20s, a home for their wellness or for their recovery from their addiction, a home for their children, for those hearts that live outside their body on their first round-faced venture away from home. Non nobis solum, writes Marcus Tullius Cicero over 2,000 years ago. Not for ourselves alone are we born. Not for ourselves alone are we born. Our country, our friends have a share in us. He was echoing a sentiment from Plato hundreds of years earlier, that humans exist for the sake of one another, that we do not exist in a bubble, we do not exist in a vacuum, we are not a rock, we are not an island. Our friends, our communities, our country, our world has a share in us, and it is our duty to contribute to the common good, to be kind, to offer help, to put whatever we have in service of a better world, not for ourselves alone. Many of you know from Amy's announcement earlier, if not for any other reason, that we had a big party last night to kick off our Building for Tomorrow, Throw Wide the Gates capital campaign. Alongside our partner organization, Friends of 2125 Chestnut Street, we're working to raise $4 million for our building through grants and through individual gifts from community members who care about our building, and through gifts from us, the members and friends that call First Unitarian their spiritual home. With this building for tomorrow, we will replace the roof and the pieces of our historic facade that are crumbling and letting in water. And we will update the art and the imagery in this sanctuary to reflect not just who we were 130 years ago, which is what it looks like now, but where we have been since, where we are now, and who we aspire to be. With this building for tomorrow, we will air condition the sanctuary in the summer. We're going to make it warmer in the winter. We're going to make our first floor fully accessible and much more flexible, creating 2 accessible first floor restrooms, a new kitchenette, a ramp to our courtyard, flexible seating in our chapel, dignified seating for those who use wheelchairs or scooters in our sanctuary, and acoustic improvements for our parish room. With this building for tomorrow, we'll install an elevator down to the basement and nearly double our accessible square footage, giving us true access to Griffin Hall and an updated kitchen, and new, I'm calling them European-style all-gender bathrooms, and a religious education space and a meeting space that's truly accessible to all of us. We've been talking about how this work will transform our own congregational life for a few years now, and we've been visioning how we want to transform our own congregational life. But not for ourselves alone are we born. Our country, our friends, our city has a share in us. My colleague on staff here, Norman Fooey, who serves as our business administrator, and I are estimating that something like 57,000 people come through our buildings each year. 57,000 different people. Maybe 1,000 of those people are connected to the congregation, their members or their friends, their visitors checking us out, their other UUs who happen to be in town. But the other something like 56,000 people, like Linda in her Narcotics Anonymous community, like the members of the SEIU 32BJ union, like kids finding life-saving community in the all-ages punk scene in our basement, and they are parents weeping at drop-off as they watch, which is most precious to them, walk up the stairs or down the stairs to one of our daycares. They're the Jews who think of this place as their home for the high holidays. They're the Chinese Christians who worship and break bread together here Sunday afternoons after we finish our service. They're organizers who think of this place as a home for their justice work. They're people who have learned hip-hop dancing here or learned to speak Spanish here, who've learned to play an instrument here or how to be part of an orchestra. These 56,000 people are not here for our faith community, but their lives are deeply affected by our mission to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world. Not for ourselves alone we are born. Our city has a share in us. We choose in this community to put our assets in service of a better world, to put these buildings in service of a much wider group of community members than just those of us who are here Sunday mornings. Hundreds of thousands of churches and synagogues around the country and mosques and temples are open for services and programs a couple times a week, but sit mostly empty the rest of the time. Something probably like half of churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples never open their doors to another community group. Never. Half of them. And that's like 400,000 communities in the United States. So something like 200,000 communities never open their doors to another community. And yet, they have these large buildings that sit empty much of the week while hundreds of thousands of community organizations and artists and individuals just need a place for their people to gather that's affordable, that's maybe on public transit, to teach and to learn, to share music and art, to organize for justice, to support each other's recovery, to celebrate weddings and new babies, and to mourn their dead. We use our assets in service of a better world. And I would say that we use this asset of our space here better than any other Unitarian Universalist congregation I've encountered in my 27 years of national leadership in our association. That's maybe like a bold claim, and of course I get to make that claim as your minister. But I know there's friends here from other congregations. I'm still going to make that claim. I think that we use our space more creatively, maybe in particular strategic ways to hold our diverse uses and communities. We don't do everything that would be valuable to the community here, but I think that we use it better than any other congregation in our faith. And some of the community members who join in our space, those 56,000 people who come here every year, some of them may choose to make gifts to our capital campaign through Friends of 2125 Chestnut Street. But the responsibility to transform this building lies with us. We own this home. We are the ones who choose how to use it. And though we make this choice again and again to put it in service of a better world, to say that we live not for ourselves alone, this is our home. And the work of inviting others to join us here rests with us. It is said that building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. Building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. And so the way that we're going about raising this money is the way that we do everything. It's going to be working to build community as we reflect together on that which is most meaningful. Each individual or family in the congregation will be invited to have a conversation with another individual or family about the capital campaign in the coming weeks. It's a chance for everyone to get firsthand information. It's a chance for everyone to get their individual questions answered, and for each person to be invited to make a gift to the capital campaign and to the annual campaign at the same time. More than anything, though, this is an opportunity for us to build community, not only amongst those with the greatest financial means here, not only the leaders of this community, but every single one of us. It's a chance to talk about why we come here and what makes us proud of this place, what we want to change about this place, what our dreams are for the future. It's a chance to build deeper relationship with another member of this community and maybe be a bit more vulnerable and a bit more courageous than we've been before together. Building community is to the collective what spiritual practice is to the individual. Many of you know that we try to never hold open invite events in our spaces that are not accessible, right? So our first floor spaces are pretty accessible. The upstairs and the downstairs spaces are not. So we try to do everything we can on this first floor. And over the past couple of years, we've been growing to the point where we've run out of spaces on our first floor. And as one of your ministers, it's often my job that when we're holding an event in an upstairs space or in a downstairs space, it's often my job to look someone in the eye who's in a wheelchair or who's using a walker, or maybe somebody who has a hidden disability but nevertheless can't go up or downstairs, and tell them they're not welcome. I almost never feel ashamed to be your minister. I almost always feel proud to be your minister. But in moments like this, when I have to look someone in the eyes whose dignity and worth is exactly the same as everybody else's, but whose body can't go up or down the stairs, I feel so clearly that we have great work to do in this community. Our current space, as it exists right now, is in opposition to our values and to our theology, which tell us that all people have inherent worth and dignity, and that we are all connected, and that what we do to one, we do to all. Not for ourselves alone we live. And every day that we delay making our space accessible, it is inaccessible not just for ourselves alone, but for the 56,000 other people who come through our building every year. It's inaccessible to the person with a walker who's looking for a home for their recovery. It's inaccessible to the punk teen in a wheelchair who feels like an outcast in so many ways more than one. It's inaccessible to the incredible nursery school teachers who have hidden disabilities that keep them from being able to go up or downstairs. It's inaccessible to those who are hungry and thirsty for knowledge and for music and for wellness and for justice, who seek out the community partners who meet here but cannot always be in an accessible room. My friends, not for ourselves alone we live. We are seeking to make a building for tomorrow, to throw wide our gates, not only for ourselves, but for the 56,000 others who join us in finding a home for themselves, some part of their life here every year. Walt Whitman wrote, "On the ferry boats, the hundreds and hundreds that cross, returning home, are more curious to me than you suppose. And you that shall cross from shore to your shore years hence are more to me and more in my meditations than you might suppose. Hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands return home to this place, home for their recovery, home for their justice work, home for their children every year. Thousands and thousands more will do so in the coming years. My friends, not for ourselves alone we live. Whatever choices we make, whatever we are able to pull together in this campaign will be magnified so far beyond our dreams. Whatever we fail to do will be magnified so far beyond our disappointments. Let us build for tomorrow. May we throw wide the gates. Amen, and blessed be."
Hi, I'm Reverend Abby Tennis, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Reverend Alexandre da Silva Soto, and my pronouns are they, them, and theirs.
And we are the ministers of the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where it is our mission to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world. We're so glad you watched this video, and we hope that its message connects with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for Zoom services Sunday morning at 11 a.m. or come in person at 2125 Chestnut Street, Center City, Philadelphia.
Whether you join in person or online, in these services you'll hear messages like you just heard. You'll get a chance to sing together, pray together, and even greet one another in coffee hour afterwards, whether you're brand new or a longtime member.
You can always find a Zoom link to our services and more about what to expect on Sunday mornings on our website, philauu.org. The link is below.
If you are connecting with this message and feel moved to give to the mission of this congregation, we invite you to click on the link below again and follow the prompts to give, or send a text message to 215-709-5095. And again, follow the prompts.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, please share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.
See you soon.